Good afternoon and welcome to Metro Home Theater Tech Tips. Sorry about the loss of the intro. We had a
technical difficulty
faux pas with the server today.
Yeah, it turns out the USB stick doesn't like to be plugged into the media player constantly. So it turns out that
So today we're a cold start.
Yep,
so,
we're doing cold start.
Today we're being brought to you by the letter D.
The letter D? What is it?
Why?
Well, I don't know. You tell me.
Distance.
Distance.
Distance. And today is all about going the distance.
So specifically, do we have a product that we're brought to you by?
Well, I think we should.
Okay.
I think today we should be brought to you by the Gigabit series, the Gigabit Accelerator series of products, the GA1 and the GA2.
There you go.
Because both of those.
There's our.
By the way, remember, we must have 6 feet between us.
That's right. So, with all of that, today's episode is brought to you by the GA1 and the GA2, which we have here with us today. We are going to be talking about distance. Now, yesterday, or probably not yesterday, Wednesday, we talked specifically about solving problems out in the field when it comes to an HDMI solution. So we had the SP3 and a couple others.
Voltage and ADID issues. Today, what we're going to discuss is video, audio, and TMDS issues. So we're going to get back to the whiteboard again, but there's a whole lot of stuff on my whiteboard right now, and before we get into that, Adam's going to give us an overhead shot. We're going to give you a really quick overview of what kind of devices you can use to extend, and then we're going to get into why you're doing this.
Right.
So starting from the top right-hand corner to me, this is an Sdi Extender. This means you can use RG6, RG59, or Mini 59 to extend up to 1080p.
Right.
Now this is a wonderful way to do it because just over coax with the 75 ohm BNC connector over 100 meters.
Right. Now
it works great.
Now and actually we can talk about this a little bit because this is one of the pieces that we use to solve a lot of problems.
Yes, it is.
And a lot of times what we run into, especially when it comes to NVRs and DVRs, that the problem is whenever you use an NVR or DVR and try to extend it over a longer distance, sometimes what you run into is a problem with the EDID or the HDCP, which can be a problem. Now, normally what we would say, and we talked about it on Wednesday,
and this morning,
was the EDID blocker. Now, what's interesting about the Mini SDI is that it technically is an EDID blocker.
Yes, it is, because it emulates an EDID from the transmit side to the source.
Right.
And this is a tremendous problem solver. There are a few, and only a few very specific occasions this can create a headache. If, for example, you have a gaming console that's remote. Ooh,
are you muted?
You.
Yeah.
I was muted.
Haha, there
and
you go.
You know why?
Yeah, I do. I think you're still muted.
Nope.
Nope, there we go. There we go.
Sorry about that, guys.
Thanks, Bob.
So, if you have a gaming console that is remote from an AVR, particularly Onkyo and Integra brand, they do have to have the EDID flags to correctly sync on Dolby Digital Audio.
Yes.
And with the SDI, you will not get that.
Yeah, so you can run into problems with the Mini SDI. It does solve a lot of problems with the EDID emulation and everything else, but it can actually cause problems in certain scenarios. So again,
understand your job.
Understand the job, see what's going on, and give us a call. Let us know ahead of time what's going on. And as always, everyone who's watching the episode today, thank you so much for watching with us. If you're watching it live, thank you very much. If you have any questions or comments about what we're talking about, put it in the chat and we will talk about it while we're here today. If you have questions or comments about something that has nothing to do with today's episode, again, leave your questions and comments in the chat and we will get to it as well. If you are watching this episode after the fact and it's been pre-recorded, leave your comments and questions down in the chat, or probably in the comments below. And as always, a like and a subscribe is very helpful to us. We did finally make it over that 800 subscriber point, so we made it past that. So we're going to shoot to the next point. So again, thank you for subscribing and hit that little bell to let you know when we're going live with that. So
and again, this is live, so anything can happen.
Anything can happen.
So next up, we have the basic entry level over category cable. Tell us about it, Adam.
So with the entry piece, and actually I want to go back to this piece after we introduce a couple items as well, because we've actually had a couple calls in the last couple days that talked about these specific situations and going the distance with an HDMI signal. So, but the nice thing about this piece here, and I'm going to switch over here to the top down. Y'all be nice in the chat now, okay? So we're going to take a look at this piece here. So this is our CS-HDC-EXT SRPOE, and as you can see there at the bottom, or pardon me, this is the EXT. This is the newer one that does not have the EDID controls on it.
Now, we did that on purpose.
Yes, we did. We were actually running into issues where the EDID controls were actually causing more problems than solving. So we decided to go ahead and do that. Now, actually, I think these are two receivers. They are two receivers. But all that to say, this piece here is great because you're getting a 1080p signal over a Cat5 or Cat6 connection. Now, you will notice that on the manual and everything, when you go to buy this, it does say Cat6. We say that more as a protective measure for these than anything else, so that you can have that as well. So, now, these pieces are great for a couple of reasons. If you get the EDID, the one with the EDID switches on it, which is the SRPOE, that's great because you can actually control what the source sees as the EDID information from the display. So you can either mimic what's on the loop out connection, which is nice because if you have a nice, low-grade TV that's there that you want to mimic, you can do that as well. Or you can have it set to 1080p, 1080i, 7-channel, 2-channel audio, even all the way down to 720p and different connections like that. So if you need to control that, you can, and is good for those purposes. So
tremendous amount of flexibility at a very good price with a lot of value.
Right.
Now, next up, we have another category-based product, and this one's HD-based T.
Right.
Which gives you all the advantages of an HD-based T 2.0 system with lots of flexibility, 12-volt IR, the distance associated with HD-based T Lite,
right,
which is 70 meters.
Yep.
Any other features you would like to share on that one, young man?
So on this one here, you do have the KVM capabilities, so meaning you have a USB connection on the display side, and with the USB connection on the display side, and actually we're going to do this one here. So this one has the 2 USB ports on it, so you can have a mouse and keyboard that then gets transmitted back to the display, or sorry, the source side. So this is really great again for using it with NVRs and DVRs, or if you have a computer that you're transmitting a signal to longer distance. Yep, an
HTPC.
Home theater PC. That was a really good use for that as well. But of course, it does have the bidirectional IR, so which is a great feature for those as well.
Which is standard US 12 volt.
Yep, and this is an HD-based T unit, so you do have the benefits of an HD-based T signal, which means you have better. What's the best way to describe that, if you would, Brent?
I'm not sure what you're trying to explain.
I'm trying to talk about HD-based T with how it has better buffering. Thank you. That's the word I was looking for. Has better buffering on that. So
it allows for more reliable installations than a non-HD-based T category-based system.
Right. And so it's more lenient, especially when it comes to your terminations. While the entry-level ones are at a cheaper price point, they are,
you have to do a better job.
A much better job at your terminations. And that's usually, and we talked about this before, in a previous episode.
No push through RJ45s.
No push through RJ45s, and the importance of those terminations when you do that termination on the lower end ones is more important than the higher end ones. While it's still very important on the higher ends, it just means you do really have to be more precise with the lower end ones.
And
but
by the way, these products work wonderfully well with the latest and greatest from Big Blue's HDMI matrix distribution systems that are running HD-based T. We've had a number of dealers use these as the receivers.
They use the receivers for it.
Yes,
so,
they do.
Now,
it is important to understand that if you have an HD-based T 2.0 transmitter, you have to have a 2.0 receiver.
Right.
If it is a non-2.0 transmitter, you cannot use a 2.0 receiver because they are not compatible.
And actually, one of our calls was about that at one point.
We learned the hard way.
We did, and so in that scenario, he needed he was replacing an HD-based T receiver,
an older
one on a different type of system, Big Blue. We won't put any names out there, but anybody in the know knows who Big Blue is. But they used one of our receivers, and in most cases, it would have worked perfectly fine. However, they had a 1.0 chipset and used a 2.0. Right, they used a 2.0 receiver.
And because the 2.0 does more stuff,
yep,
it would not communicate properly with the 1.0 transmitter.
Right. So if you're in situations like that, give us a call again. We are happy to help out, and we'll put our number down here in just a little bit for that as well. So
what's next, sir?
So the next piece that we have, of course, is the audio version of the 4K extender that we have. It has all the same capabilities of the UK-70, but now we add in the audio functions. And we've talked about this before. With this piece here, you do add in the functionality of having 2 Toslink connections. The nice thing about that Toslink connection is that it is bidirectional. So you can send audio from the source to the display. So if you have a receiver or either an AVR or a soundbar, you can do that there. Or if you're trying to take audio from the TV, you can send that back to
if you have
the
an
source
older
device.
non-ARC AVR.
Exactly, and so you can do that as well. Now this is the only extender that we have on in stock that is ARC capable. So it does have the ability to use the ARC.
So you can do ARC, but if you have an older non-ARC unit, you can handle it with the optical side.
Right. Yep. So this is a great piece for that. It's a step up from just the regular KVM, while it does still have the USB KVM capabilities on it. So in those applications where you need to do an audio pass back or an audio forward pass, you can do that with this piece here. This is the CS-HDBT-P2 UKA-70.
I'm impressed.
You know what? Eventually I'm going to memorize all of them.
Now, next is our latest and greatest HD-based T unit that is so good in picture that when we sat back here looking at the 930 series 65-inch Sony,
yep,
we could not tell the difference between the video on this and a fiber cable.
Right.
Wow.
Yeah.
The range is fantastic. It actually goes longer than traditional HD-based Ts.
Yep.
120?
120 meters. So this is our brand new. It's 120 meters. It also has the capability of doing 150 meters at 1080p. So
sure.
A 4K 60 HDR image at 18 gigs. This will do 120 meters. At 1080p, it'll do 150. But again, that's very reliant on your terminations and the quality of the wire. So make sure if you're going to need to go that far with something like that, make sure you do Cat6 and do really good terminations with
12 volt IR?
12 volt IR. It
and
also
very
has
slim chassis.
Very slim chassis. It also has RS-232 capabilities, forward and backwards.
Which is a really nice feature for guys that are doing true automation interface.
Right. So if you're trying to control an RS-232 device like a television, you can actually use this as the transmission for the RS-232 if you only have the one category wire.
Now, like these others, with the exception of this one, is a single side power, correct?
Correct. Yep. And in fact, that one is a single side. Everything that we've talked about today, except for the SDI, is single side power. So you only have to power it on either the transmit side or the receive side. We recommend the transmit side, or if you need to, in some cases, you can put it on the receive side as well.
Now I'm going to clean some of this up while you start talking about the fiber side of it, and then I'll get into the other side.
So, as we've talked about in other episodes before as well, Leo, it's great to see you, buddy. We appreciate that. So, let's see, just got played. Good to see you there as well. And hi, Jesse, and hey, Kyle. Okay, so in other episodes, we've talked about fiber in those episodes. Now, it's important to discuss this as well, because when you are going further distances, fiber is going to be the device that you use to go that further distance.
Particularly into the future.
Right. So what we have, of course, is we have our standard, this is our our HDMI over fiber Balun set, not Balun, wrong term, extender, thank you. This is our extender, HDMI over fiber. The nice thing about this is that all it takes is a standard LC connector. It's an OM3 style connector, an SFP adapter. It does have the RS-232 as well as 12 volt IR. So you do have the capabilities of tying this into an automation system so that if you're trying to control something that's on the other side, especially if it's that further distance away than what you can get to with a regular copper cable. Or if you just need to make sure that you need to get the good signal quality or the bandwidth to that point, especially as we go into the future of requiring higher and higher bandwidths, right?
And another nice thing with this, and he's going to talk about these other cables in just a second, is it can be used going forward if you have a fiber AOC that's already there that somehow gets damaged. And we've had a previous show on that that's worth looking at.
Right, and in fact, we'll go ahead and talk about it now. Just this past week, we had a gentleman who had one of our AOC install bay cables, and the cable was damaged during installation. And unfortunately, he did not have a way to remove that cable without opening the wall. And so at that point, he was able to put this into place. Not all of the fiber strands were damaged, and so he was able to use the one that was not damaged, and he was able to then get an HDMI signal from one side to the other. Now, we're going to talk about it, but how is this piece able to use one strand of fiber versus our HDMI cables?
Well, honestly, it all comes down to cost. It all really comes down to cost.
Right.
Because when you look at these devices right here, these products, the size of them,
right,
they cannot put a single chip in there that's going to handle all 4 of the channels simultaneously.
Right.
So in order to get it into a head shell size, it has to have 4 very small ones versus an extender that has the room to put it a single chip, a single cable chip
Right.
to break it out. There's just not that room in the head shells in a cable.
Essentially what it's doing is we are still using 4 channels on the AOC cables, AOC cables, but essentially what that's doing, yeah, right. Essentially what it's doing is we are still using 4 channels worth for the TMDS line, or the video line,
Right.
or the signal line.
We're just injecting them with the larger chipset down a single fiber on the extender
On the other pieces.
versus the cable.
Right. So with that, we have a couple pieces as well. Of course, you all know our HD AOCD and our AOC. This is from our install bay line of cables. Now, the install bay line of cables is great. It's a great price point for everybody to get into as well. But the nice thing about the detachable head shells, and we can actually talk about that a little bit.
Is that the detachable box?
It is the detachable box.
Now, these are also 24 gigabit fiber cables. They are 4x6, so you're fully prepared to roll into the next iteration of HDMI when it legitimately becomes available.
Right. So with these detachable head shells, what's nice is that if you have a conduit in place, or even if you don't have a conduit, if you're doing a pre-wire installation, these head shells, and actually will you give me a top-down shot?
Yes, I certainly shall.
So the nice thing about these cables here, boink, boink, there we go. And it's a little bit, there you go, right there. So that cable there, the nice thing about this head shell is that you can actually pull that head shell off, and you're left with a much, much smaller head to actually pull through the conduit. And then from there, you would use something, this piece here that is included.
Condom.
Yep. This piece here, what actually goes over top of that smaller head shell and allows you to then pull it with the little eye there at the front with whatever string that you have inside the conduit with that. So it's a great little piece for that. Great for if you're doing a pre-wire construction and you're using conduit. It's great for if you have put conduit in a installation that's already finished and you need to get either a new cable put in place, or if you need to get the higher bandwidth capabilities out of it over the longer distances, or even the shorter distances. We have this at 30 feet all the way up to 260 feet.
I believe so.
I think I'm right on that.
I believe so. Now, one of the biggest advantages of doing fiber, again, is the ability to move into the fiber extenders in the future. And in a few cases, guys haven't waited because somebody didn't properly run the cable in the correct direction.
Yep.
And with an active copper cable, you're done. It's over.
It's
Have
done.
a nice day. If you can't replace it, there's nothing you can do.
You're going to have to open up some walls.
Yes, with the fiber cable, you're not done.
Right.
You can, in fact, take the ends off if this has happened.
Yep.
And terminate it with an LC and move forward into the future.
That's right. So this will give you the ability to then use those fiber cables again in the case where either you put it in backwards, had your installer put it in backwards, or whatever it is. Yeah, please don't put it in backwards. Or in the future, as we move past the requirements of what these cables are capable of, then from there you'll be able to then extend that. It will take some time, but you will have the ability to extend that to the higher bandwidth requirements at that time. So,
ooh, talk about that one next, because that's exciting.
We're going to talk about this one. This is our brand new 48 gig fiber AOC HDMI cable. So, what this is essentially is it gives you the capability of doing 48 gigs over extremely long distances for HDMI. This is a 30-meter reel that I have here in front of me. However, we go all the way up to 100 meters with this HDMI cable at 48 gigs.
That's 4x12.
That's 4x12. That means that when we go into the 8K world and we are requiring 48 gigs in order to get the highest resolution possible with HDMI 2.1, you will be able to do that with this cable over long distances without doing any kind of compression. And that's very important. The compression part of this is very important, especially as we go to talk about how we go the distance here in just a little bit. So, no compression, 48 gigs at 100 meters, which is 328 feet. At that distance, you'll be able to get 48 gigs on an 8K TV
now,
and source.
When you look at this, I'm going to give you the overhead. If you'll show the back end of it, that end.
That right there?
No, the back end.
Back end?
This end. There's actually a power port that we can't see. There's a small power port in the back.
We'll do this
in the event that TVs cut their power supplies down in size, and they will, you are prepared with this cable to easily add supplemental power.
Right.
And here is why, and we'll get into this a little bit more when we're talking about the distance, and we covered it last Wednesday. The display side of the system powers the output of the source side.
Right.
It's also responsible for powering any electronics in an active cable. Right now, particularly with the 8K televisions, and every major manufacturer has a flagship 8K now.
Yes.
Now.
Yep.
They are building large power supplies. They're building it overbuilt to make sure it functions. Obviously, as implementation becomes much wider and costs come down, something will have to give up. And typically, the first thing to go away is the heavy-duty power supply.
Right.
They eventually figure out how much they need at a bare minimum, and that's what they go to.
Yep.
So you are capable with this cable of adding power when you need it, when the TVs get cheap. Now, next up are the Gigabit Accelerators. Now, the Gigabit Accelerators are something we have been selling for years. The GA1 was our very first active piece for 4K.
Right.
And we actually had it out about 18 months before it was needed, but some of the guys that were intelligent planned it, built it in, and they were ready to go when the displays hit. In fact, the first ones were Sony and JVC.
Right.
And they had out the full 4K receivers, or 4K displays.
Yep.
So it was ready to go with the GA1 right out of the gate with an existing passive HDMI cable.
Now, the GA1 actually started its life as something else, didn't it?
No.
No, it actually came out as
this
itself?
was its own purpose.
Okay.
Other things did, but this one started off specifically to take an existing passive cable and turn it into 18 and actually 24 gigabits if it is a properly built HDMI cable.
Right.
And one of the things we've talked about many times in the past is 4 HDMI channels, 4 high-speed channels. The vast majority of the cables out there legitimately are 3. There we go, 3. Red, green, and blue. The 4th channel clock is supposed to be high speed, but most manufacturers cut it down because it's never actually needed to carry high speed data. We have not done that. All of our cables in the Ethereal brand and the Velux brand are 4 equivalent high speed channels. So you can take a GA1, which is rated at 18 gig, plug it into a true 4 equal channels cable, and you have actually 24 gigabits. Right now. So it takes you into the next iteration of HDMI, the ability to support the bandwidth, the higher resolution, the higher refresh rates, and more color depth as we move deeper into BT 2020.
Now, this is actually kind of interesting because the GA1 is still a valid part.
Oh, absolutely.
And in fact, in some cases, that is actually better to use the GA1 than the GA2.
Yes, it is.
And I think we should get into those details.
And they have 2 different purposes. When you look at the GA2, this one, there's a fair amount of equalization adjustments on it. And these adjustments allow you to match the electronics in this to the incoming cable. If it's a lousy cable, we can boost the gain coming out of the cable. It also matches the equalization of this to the input of the television. And the reason we do this is TVs have different hearing capabilities. Some TVs have really good hearing, and you can be a little too loud going into them. So we can turn it back a little bit so it's not too loud. Some TVs can't hear worth a darn, and we have to speak loudly for them to hear. The equalization built into the GA2 allows us to do that. The GA1 did not have that, and honestly it wasn't that important because we weren't trying to support the bandwidth requirements.
Right, it wasn't really a necessity for it.
This will.
Right.
Now, the trade-off is this. The GA1 honestly will give you greater distance at 18 and 24 gig than the GA2 will. This is good if you're using the Velux passive cables up to 22 meters.
Right.
If you're using a typical off-the-shelf, pretty much anybody else's cable, 15. We do build our cables better.
It's just a matter of fact.
The GA2 really is meant to go to 12 meters for an 18 or 24 gig system and 10 meters for 48.
Right.
The chipset is more equalized to the higher bandwidth than the lower bandwidth. So it's a different purpose for a different job, but both jobs exist. Now, in either case, to get the best performance out of either cable, what you want to use is a Velux passive cable.
Right.
This is without question the best passive cable on the market, and even our 10-meter cable, which you're seeing here, will go to 24 gig at 33 feet without any additional electronics. This means you put the 10-meter Velux in right now, you are set to go without adding anything else into your high-end Nero 4, JVC 9 series, your Sony 695s, 995s.
Yep.
the big Epsons, the 6050s, UHBs. You're ready to go with anything that can go into those projectors now and in the near future. Near being, by the way, 5 years, not tomorrow.
So just to reiterate what this is here, this is getting you 24 gigs at 10 meters. Now, for everybody here in the States who doesn't use that doesn't use the metric system, you're talking about 32 feet with this cable here over an HDMI connection at 24 gigs. That means that you are able to get full non-compressed bandwidth of 24 gigs, well, which we're only using 18 of currently
today.
But you're going to be able to get 24 gigs across that full 10-meter distance as well. So definitely a piece to look at. Call up your reps, call up your distributors, find out some pricing on that. Now, Matthew Provost, pardon me if I'm pronouncing that incorrectly, you can yell at me in the comments, but he's asking, is the 48 gigabit per second cable available now? I
believe so. Now,
yeah.
Okay, I'm going to make a qualifier on that. Is it still in stock is the better question.
I think, yeah.
We are tech support. We do not have access to inventory numbers.
Yep.
It was in stock. We were selling them. I assume there's some still in stock. I'm sure sales will pop up and say something on YouTube that we'll share with everybody here in a moment.
The best thing to do is to contact your rep or your distributor and find out if they are available to you. They'll be able to get you pricing and everything else for that. So definitely give them a call and shoot them an email or however you want to get in contact with them. Or if anybody in the sales department is watching this, if you can put that down in the chat if it's available now or not, or maybe reach out to...
The question is it still in stock?
If it's still in stock. If not, try and reach out to Mr. Provost.
If you have not already done so, on our YouTube channel, there's an excellent video that we did right after CES where we had this cable using the Meridio 8K generator on the Samsung 900R2 panel, as I recall.
Yes, yes we did.
And showing that it, in fact, is capable of supporting a full 8K at 420 at 10-bit color, which is where 8K is going to be.
Yeah, and actually he's asking about the model number, and I will get that for you in just a moment. Now, Brent, while I'm looking up that information, let's talk about the actual aspect of going farther distances and why it's so difficult on something like a copper HDMI cable.
Okay, so I'm going to switch this to overhead and do my favorite thing, which is artwork.
Yay!
So,
there's that for you.
Thank you. When you're looking at the signal, it's all about the eye pattern. Now, as we discussed on Wednesday, ones and zeros, highs and lows, ons and offs. Now, once again, digital is digital, right?
Of course.
Yeah, about that. So when you look at an eye pattern, and this is just a series of ones and zeros, we're going to start with what's called the mask. Now, the mask is the minimal acceptable signal that the TV can recognize as yes, it's a 1 or no, it's a 0. That's all it wants to know. Now, the way this works is when cables are tested, the source will transmit out a series of 0, 1, 0, 1, 0, 1, 0, 0, 0, 1, 1, 1. And they do this very quickly depending on the resolution and hundreds of thousands of times. And the thing about this is, as we discussed on Wednesday, from here to here, the rise is not possible to be straight as you go fast because it would require a black hole. So over time, what you wind up with, and the reason it's called an eye pattern, is this. So you have the corona and the eye. The greater the distance, the smaller the eye pattern will become. Anybody that's ever taken a forked stick and dragged it on a concrete sidewalk or asphalt will know this gets shorter, 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 and you run out of stick.
Right.
The exact same thing happens to electrical current over distance. So the further you go, the closer those two pieces become to the point they hit. Now, I'm going to switch over to a different color here. We may be able to see it. And we're going to show a fail point. So as it starts to collapse, it gets into the eye. Once it breaches the eye, these are the sparkles you were talking about the other day.
Yes.
And that is purely distance related. Once this happens, the picture starts to fail, and it will start with sparkles, and if you get enough failure, and you'll get a black picture. Now, it gets a little bit more exciting than that. He's writing down the part number for the for the fiber right now. But when you're looking at this, it's not a single eye pattern as we've shown here. It is 3 eye patterns representing standard component, red, green, and blue. Now, as Adam has discussed multiple times, you can get red, green, blue, or white sparkles.
Right.
And
now it depends
what is
on
the
which
difference?
It depends on which channel it's coming down on that 4-channel setup.
Or
Now,
if the whole cable's garbage.
real quick, Mr. Provost, your model number's down here. It's the EHV-HDG2- whatever the distance is.
XXX.
In this case, it's going to be the 10, 15, 20, 25, 30, 50, 65, 80, or 100. And of course, this is in meters. Yes, that is correct. So, and we're trying to educate all us Americans over here with the correct way to do measurements. So, which, you know.
Yeah.
Yeah. Anyways, what do we got?
Okay, so remember, we have got multiple channels.
Hey, I used to do this as a kid. Take all the colors together and just kind of make them all go together with that.
Okay.
Oh, am I gonna do it?
Yeah, you're gonna do it.
Okay, what are we doing?
You're gonna give me 3 lines, and then you're gonna give me a 4th line. I can't hold all 4 in my hand.
Okay, I'm gonna try it. I'm gonna try and do it this way.
So when you're looking at the signal, you got a red, a green, a blue, or actually it's blue, green, red, or no, red, green, blue. No, why? It's green, blue, red.
Oh, I've got it backwards.
That's close enough.
There you go.
So, you've got all 4 of these high-speed lanes, the black being the clock. The thing of it is, not only do you have to get an eye pattern in each lane, the center point of each of those masks has to line up across all 4 lanes. Now, this is actually substantially easier in fiber than it is in copper.
Right.
Because with fiber, as long as the fiber is essentially the same length, because you have to have dramatic length variances for time to affect it.
Right, because of course it's light that we're passing through
right.
now.
And dramatic length differences.
And of course, even through a fiber connection, light does change speed because we're going through a different medium. So that's why the quality of the connection, or pardon me, the quality of the fiber, just like in the copper connections, is very, 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 very important with that. Because a less pure or a lower quality fiber means that one strand could get a little bit slower than the other strand.
And it will affect you.
Right.
But with copper, it gets much worse because it's not just the length of a twisted pair, and by the way, that's very critical because we're talking minor differences in time.
Right.
But the way the twists happen and the way that the twists line up with each other. So when we look at copper cables, one of the 2 most common things is called intra-pair and intra-pair skew. Inter-pair skew, I-N-T-E-R, is when you have a twist ratio and a wire that's not quite centered. So it is longer on one side than the other. Remember, this is a send and return.
Right.
And those null points need to cross over.
Right.
Intra-pair skew is when you have multiple wires and they have to match up. Now, as you see here, they don't.
Yeah.
That's going to be a timing problem.
Right.
And that's going to show up, as the sparkles that you see on the TV screen.
Right.
With copper wires, this is super critical. It's less critical in fiber.
Yes. Now, of course, now in fiber, we're not doing a twist ratio because, of course, we're just doing distancing at that point.
All we really need to happen is for the transmit and receive pixels or...
Vixels?
Toseroses.
Toseroses. There you go.
The toseroses to encode, decode at the same time frame.
I will believe you.
And they're built that way. I mean, they're built as a single unit.
Toseroses, that word just makes me hungry. It just sounds like something.
I think of a Ferrari.
Oh, yeah? Okay.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
Testarossa.
There you go, Testarossa.
All I think of is red.
There you go.
But with copper, you have to do it correctly. The twist ratios, the length of the wire is very important. That's why you pay more for a quality HDMI cable than one off the internet.
Right.
Because what you're getting is better control of the manufacturing process. Now, we talked about ones and zeros, highs and lows, and digital being digital. Let's talk about what digital is. Now, we discussed this briefly on Wednesday, but can I?
Yeah.
Yep.
In fact, he has actually put the model number. You are correct. That is the model number. It's actually in the chat now. Thank you, Mr. Provost.
So, ones and zeros. 4 point, it's a 1 and a 0.
Right.
An on and off, a yin and a yang.
Right.
Here's the thing when you're looking at these. Again, they all have to line up, but you also have to have sufficient voltage high and low to be recognized. This is what we talked about the eye pattern earlier. If there's not enough there for any reason, there's a fail point. Now, HDMI failures typically are cumulative. It's generally not one single thing that fails. So you have a cable. No cable's perfect. We do a very good job, and no cable's perfect. So you're going to have 3, 4 high-speed channels. One will be slightly different than the other. There's no way around that because of mechanical features of building the wire. Now, if only one part of that's slightly off, it's no big deal. But let's say it's the blue. Now, let's say there's also a problem on the circuit board in blue. Because trace equalization, meaning that all the traces are the same length, is very important on a circuit board in a display or a source.
Right.
So we're a little off on the blue there, maybe a little off on the blue on the cable. These add together to equal the failure. So it is not uncommon to have a cable that you used in one job that worked perfect.
Yep.
You put it in another job,
and you got a problem.
and it doesn't.
And actually, this even goes even further. When today, in fact, we had a call about this particular issue. The gentleman had he had 2 devices and a couple HDMI cables. Now they were all strung together in series from each other. So we went from the source device. It was an NVR. It was going across an HDMI cable to an extender. In fact, it was our entry-level extender, the CS-HDC EXT SRPOE. Oh, I missed a number. There's a 5 in there. Went from that extender, then across an HDMI cable again to our splitter, and then from the splitter out again across HDMI cables to televisions. Now, in that situation, it came down to the fact that because we were adding accumulative problems to it,
The errors compounded
that's where the
enough.
problems came from.
You take any one of the items out, and the system works.
Exactly. Yeah.
So it's this problem. Well, no, it's not because of that item.
Yep.
If I put that item back in but took this item out, it would also still work.
Exactly. It was the additive problems of both systems or all of the systems, because we're in a world now where it's almost impossible to get a perfectly made
everything.
product. Even our Velux cables, which are, again, our returns on those are less than a tenth of a percent, but again, it does happen. You do have different variations and whatnot, and of course with the HDMI standard,
Which is not super tight.
I was going to say, don't laugh. With the HDMI standard, it's not very tight or it doesn't give you very much leeway in order to have those problems from product to product. And so as you add more and more to it, that's why we're big proponents for less things on the signal path.
And that's
is
why
better.
digital is not digital.
Right.
So let's go back to my drawing. We're going to kind of replicate what we did on Wednesday. Now, in theory, 4.7 or higher is a 1. In theory, 0.9 or lower is a 0, in theory. Now, here is my eye pattern. Now, eye pattern changes depending on resolution.
Okay.
The higher the resolution, the smaller the eye pattern is allowed to be. So if we're at 720, it could be a fairly large eye pattern. Now, this is relative because this data is moving fairly slow.
Of course.
Now, as you know, we're not talking speed, we're talking quantity. Remember our little car thing from last week?
When we were talking about the bandwidth.
We talked about the cars going down the road, the bandwidth. That's what this comes down to. Here's where the variance happens. I'm a TV and I got it, I want to see a 1 or a 0. Well, digital is digital. It's just read as 1s and 0s. The problem is this: where is it read?
Right.
There is not, in theory, the eye pattern is it, but the eye patterns vary a little bit from device to device. So is it read here? Is it read here or here? These variances are what causes the problem. And remember, and when you look at an eye pattern, you can tell this, the signal path is still analog. There's no way to go straight from here to here. It can't be done. That is through a black hole.
Right.
So the signal path itself is still analog. It's merely read at the top or the bottom. The question is, where is the top and where is the bottom? That's what makes the 1s and the 0s. And different devices will read lower than other devices. A device that reads fairly low may be very consistent in its performance, meaning it works with this, 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 and this, but the picture may not be quite as good. Now, HDMI, the pictures are all the same, cables don't matter. Well, it is not uncommon for some devices to allow a 70% acceptance to lock on the picture. Now, 70% is a lock. You get a picture.
Yeah.
But it's not as good a picture as if you had 90%, because it's not as much data.
Right.
But you do get a picture, and it may be sparkle free.
Yeah.
But you don't get as much of the data.
The TV itself is having to extrapolate the information
Yes,
and guess
it's guessing.
as to what it should be. So if you have the ability to give it the best picture quality to begin with, the best signal quality to begin with, it doesn't have to do so much extra work to guess and decide which one it's going to be.
More is always better
So
when it comes to data.
And how about this analogy? When we look at the digital world with HDMI and how it communicates, the digital portion of it is the language, whereas the analog portion of it is the sound of the language leaving your voice. So the sound is analog, but you understand what I'm saying because you understand the language that I'm speaking.
I always consider it Amazon delivery.
Amazon
The
delivery?
delivery is the signal, the door is the digital read.
There you go. That's the way to do it.
How wide am I opening the door, and can I hear the doorbell?
Yep.
Now, as anybody that knows me knows, I am not a quiet individual.
Yep.
And I don't hear as well as, say, Adam, who speaks quietly and has good hearing.
Right.
So frequently when he talks, it's either that or I'm just ignoring him.
Well, that too. So, guys, everybody who's in the comments asking about that part, contact your sales rep about that product because it is, it will be available again soon. It's just, I believe Kyle made a good reason as to why it just hasn't made its way onto the website yet. But it is in the catalog. So if you go onto the website and download our catalog, you can actually view it there. It's got some great information on it in the description on the catalog. Or contact your rep and actually get a printed catalog sent out to you as soon as you can. So it's a great packet of information about what we have, what's available, and then of course you can do some research from there as well.
And don't forget, if you've got a passive cable already on your job site, the GA1 and the GA2 really are the answers. Wow, that is not easy. Are really the answers to make it work going forward with both where we are with HDMI 2.0 and going forward into 2.1.
Kyle's actually making a really good point. Kyle's one of our sales reps. Hey, Kyle, good to see you on the chat. If you have any questions, feel free to reach out to Kyle or any of your reps if you know their information. Kyle's just putting his contact information out there. His email is KyleC, that's KYLEC, @metrohometheater.com. And he'll be able to get you that information as well. Or, of course, you can call us here at Tech Support. Our phone number here is 386-492-8584. And Brent is putting our email addresses down here as well. And we'll switch over that here in just a second. But, as always, before you go to do a project or as you're in the planning phase, give us a call. We're happy to help out in those situations. We're big proponents of being ahead of the problem. So when you are designing a system, even if you're 100% sure that everything's going to work exactly like you want it to, give us a call.
Don't be.
Yeah, give us a call. This is one of those things where, just double check, triple check. There may be some things that we see because we are in tech support. A lot of times we see that there are problems with firmware that's been released by certain manufacturers or where things are happening around the world with HDMI issues or even into other problems with AVR, TVs, and everything else.
We have regular conversations with the vast majority of manufacturers out there.
Right. Yeah.
So I'm going to switch over to our overhead now.
There you go.
Adam R.
Yep.
Brent M.
Yep.
At metrohometheater.com. And that's an at.
There you go. Oh, that's an at?
That was an at.
Oh, okay.
Not near as good as your at.
Yeah, I was going to say, I'm practiced.
386-492-8984.
8584.
85?
8584. See? There you go. Got to get that memorized. So, as always, everybody, feel free to give us a call with any questions or comments or any concerns that you might have. Or if you're running into problems out in the field, of course, we are here as your tech support team.
And help to design your system.
Exactly. Now, as always, we help out in situations where it's not even our product. A lot of times we've gotten calls from guys on the job, and they have not even a single piece of our product, let alone in their project, even on their truck or at their warehouse. So we're happy to help out in those situations. In any situation, of course, if you have our product, we're happy to help out as always. But give us a call ahead of time. Give us a call while you're there on site. Give us a call when you're planning. Give us a call when the customer's in the background screaming at you because you screwed something up.
Yeah, we're here. And by the way, I've got 32 years of marriage, so if you just need somebody to yell at,
you're used to that.
I'm used to it.
There you go.
Now, Real quick, we had an interesting call yesterday.
Yes, we did. And actually, before you say that, while Brent is telling us about this call, if you have any further questions, feel free to put them down in the chat right now. Or if you're watching this after the fact and you're watching the recording, of course, put your questions or comments down in the comment section below. And as always, if we have done a good episode for you today, give us a thumbs up, give us a subscribe, and hit that little bell notification thing so that you can see every time that we go live like this, or when we upload some new videos, which we have quite a few videos upcoming that we're very excited about to talk about. In fact, starting next week, we're going to be talking about bulk wire and terminations.
We're going to bulk you up.
We're going to bulk you up. So, with that, give us a call, give us that information with that. As always, if you have questions, put it down in there for below. Leo, you do, honestly, and that's perfectly fine. If you guys just want to call up and say how's it going and whatnot, that's perfectly fine as well.
Please send money. PayPal.
There you go. Brent,
so,
tell us what happened.
A while back, you and I had some conversations about 110 and discussing grounding.
Right.
Got a call from a dealer last night and says, just putting some stuff back in, use your cables. You've helped me with some things before.
Oh,
I got one for you.
Yes.
So the guy calls me, and he had replaced gear that had been damaged. He thought a lightning strike or something. He wasn't sure.
Right.
He goes in there, and he goes to unplug the cable from a Roku connected to a flat panel TV 10 meters away. He said the Roku was blistering hot.
Hot. Yes, hot to the touch.
Not warm, hot.
Yep,
He
to the point where he's going to burn his hand.
And as he's moving the cable around, the metal part of the HDMI terminal, the little head shell part, touches a metal case on an air handler that was right beside the rack.
Yep.
It sparked, tripped the circuit breaker, and shut the whole circuit down.
Yep.
So he calls me, turns it back on, and said, okay, well, before we connect it back up, break out your volt-ohm meter, and fortunately he actually had one with him.
Yep, please, again, we've had this discussion before on one of these episodes about the things that you should always have with you, even in your personal vehicle. If you do jobs visits in your personal vehicle, you should have a little, a runaway bag that you take with you if you think you're going to be going to a job site. You should always have a voltmeter in there as well.
Some kind of USB media streamer, because that just helps us to solve the problem. So he breaks out the volt-ohm meter, runs it across the terminal on the HDMI cable, and touches the metal chassis of the air handler.
Right.
And there's 43 volts.
43 volts. Brent.
43 volts.
Now, this is actually kind of interesting because you and I have also run into problems like this here.
Which killed us on one of our broadcasts.
From one of our broadcasts. We actually ran into an issue, and it actually shut down our broadcast. This was actually back in April, I think, is when it happened.
One of the very first ones, yeah.
Yeah, one of the first ones when we came back. So it was very interesting because the way that we had everything laid out, we thought it was just a ground differential, but we were getting between 48 and 90 volts on our situation.
Well, and that's so I had him move to a different circuit. Problem persisted. I said, okay, let's try a different source on the circuit in place of the display.
Mm-hmm.
With the different source, he got 56 volts.
Yeah.
Now, this is not from the power, this is from the HDMI cable. There was 56 volts going down the outer sleeve,
which is the ground sleeve
of the HDMI cable,
of the HDMI, right.
Which also ties to ground on your device.
Right.
Now, what this indicates is somewhere in that house there was a major loss of ground, and it was actually using that HDMI cable to ground the AC system.
Yep.
Or through the AC system.
Yep.
So the first thing when you see that, you need to shut everything off, unplug it, call the power company.
Yep.
Because there's something wrong at that house.
Yes. So call the power company, call the electrician. There is something dangerously wrong.
This is not for you.
Yeah, this is something that's dangerously wrong with it. So be very, very careful with that. You're okay. With everything with that, be very, very careful with it. At higher voltages like that, even though 48 volts isn't considered high voltage,
he had to cook something.
It'll cook something, and you'll get a shock from it.
And he had already had gear cooked, and he was wondering why, and it's because this amount of voltage going over the HDMI circuit.
Yep. And honestly, it's enough voltage for there to be possibly something dangerous happening that could possibly start a fire.
The next thing to remember is it tripped a circuit breaker, so it's not just voltage. It was pulling a ton of current to trip a 20 amp circuit breaker.
Right.
So it's not just voltage you're looking at. So anything like this weird, stop, step back, unplug stuff, call somebody that's an electrician. By the way, we have an electrical episode coming up.
Yes, we do.
Which we have our corporate electrician, thank God we have one on staff, who works with us in the field on AV and lighting and definitely knows his stuff. And it will be a great episode for learning about grounding, what to do and what not to do.
Now, that one's going to be a couple weeks away. We do have a couple of new episodes lined up that's upcoming. We're going to be putting all of that information up on the website as well as onto the YouTube channel. You'll see that there's actually the next couple videos that we have where we're going to be going live are already in the YouTube. So if you subscribe, you can actually go to those videos and put a little reminder button on it so you'll get reminded when those are actually coming out live. So we definitely recommend that, so you can come in and check that out. We'll be putting the rest of the videos up there as well. That one's going to be a couple weeks away, but you should see that here in the next couple days.
By the way, we put one up, I believe, yesterday on our different HDMI cable series.
Right.
Obviously starring me. Adam takes the more mundane things, although they're the harder ones.
The mundane things.
Mundane things.
The things that actually,
the networking, the video surveillance.
The things that actually make people money.
Yeah. Just slap me while I'm down.
I'm just saying.
Slap me while I'm down. Okay, any other questions?
No other questions. I wanted to get this out there because you guys were asking about it on the chat. If you need to call the sales department, of course, 386-255-0234. If you need to call us on tech support, you can call us at 386-492-8584. And as always, please, please, please give us a call ahead of time if you have something going on, or if you're in the field right now with the problem and your customer's behind you screaming at you, we're happy to help out there as well. This is your number.
This is my direct number. If anybody doesn't know it, put it on there. You can reach me from 8 a.m. to 10 p.m.
Eastern Time.
Eastern Standard Time, 7 days a week.
Now, I do expect to see Brent's phone number on the bathroom stalls in every bathroom that you go in. So please, please, please make sure you do that as well. Thanks. Look, you're single. I just want to make sure you're taken care of.
Thank you.
Yes. So, okay. All right, everybody. Thank you, as always, for checking in with our episode today. Do you have anything else to add for us?
I think we've pretty much covered it. Remember, reboot early.
Reboot often.
I'm Brent.
I'm Adam.
Have a great weekend.
We'll see you guys later.
Thank you.